Welcome back to Raptor-One.
Raptor-One, Voyagers of the Stars. Chapter 6, The Derelict. The nebula stretched around them like a bruise on the galaxy. Rose and ash colors churned in slow, silent tides, faint lightning threading its folds. Somewhere within that haze lay Drift Corridor Theta, the path Juno's shard insisted upon. Somewhere deeper still, waiting like a tooth in the fog, was the derelict. Lyra guided Raptor-One carefully, hands steady on the controls. The nebula was dense with dust and debris, sensors fuzzed with interference, and even the ship's hull seemed to creak under the static charge clinging to it. Every light on the console flickered in faint protest. Kael broke the silence with his usual brand of relief through sarcasm. Nothing like flying blind through a thundercloud of death dust. Remind me again why we didn't just turn around and head for some beach moon? Because the beach won't answer our questions, Lyra said. Kael snorted. Neither will dying in a lightning storm. At the NAV station, Juno's face was pale, her eyes glowing faintly with the shard's reflected light. It isn't storm, she said softly. It's residue. Old energy. Something burned here long ago. The shard remembers. That made Lyra's grip tighten on the yoke. If even the stars carried scars from the War of the Architects and the Autumn, what kind of wound would the derelict be? Approach. Hours stretched as they drifted deeper into the nebula. Communication crackled, sensors cut in and out, and Kael swore as every alarm chirped false warnings. But through it all, the shard kept pulsing, drawing them onward. Finally, the interference thinned, and space opened into a clearing in the mist. And there it was. The derelict. It dwarfed Raptor-One. No, it dwarfed entire fleets. The husk of a ship larger than a city, its hull split in half, its spine twisted and torn. Its surface was scorched black, pitted with impacts, scarred by energy blasts that had once burned with the power of suns. Entire towers of alloy jutted out like broken ribs, fragments of long-dead architecture now floating as orbiting debris. The derelict wasn't drifting aimlessly. It was anchored. Thin threads of energy tethered it to invisible points within the nebula, holding it steady like a spider in its web. Kael let out a low whistle. That's not just a wreck. That's a graveyard the size of a continent. Juno's breath caught. No, not a graveyard. A library. The shard pulsed brightly in Lyra's hand. Docking. They circled the derelict cautiously, searching for a point of entry. Vast hangar bays yawned like broken mouths, their edges jagged and sharp. Some glowed faintly, as though power still lingered in hidden veins. Lyra chose one of the smaller bays. If anything that could fit 3 warships side by side could be called small. Raptor-One slipped into the darkness, her lights piercing only a fraction of the cavernous interior. The ship settled onto a fractured deck with a hollow thud. Dust rose in clouds, floating weightless before drifting back down. Home sweet nightmare, Kael muttered, powering down the thrusters. Lyra stood, clipping her pistol to her side. We going careful. Weapons ready. No heroics. Kael smirked faintly. You always say that right before we do something heroic and stupid. Juno's voice was hushed. We're not alone. Lyra's head snapped toward her. Autumn? Juno shook her head. No. Human. The stranger. They found him near the shattered core of the bay. A lone figure, hooded, waiting beside a flickering beacon. His voice came through the comms, calm and steady. Took you long enough. Lyra raised her pistol instinctively, though the man didn't move. You're the one who sent the transmission. I am, the stranger said. He pulled back his hood, revealing a face lined with age and scarred by burns, one eye replaced with a faintly glowing implant. And you brought it with you. His gaze fell on the shard in Lyra's hand. Kael stepped forward, rifle raised. You've got about 10 seconds to explain who you are and why we shouldn't toss you out an airlock. The man chuckled softly. If you tried, the derelict itself would stop you. She doesn't suffer thieves. My name is irrelevant. What matters is that I was Alliance once. I saw what they did with the first shard they found. I watched them bury it in bureaucracy, call it a weapon, lock it away. They don't want the truth. They want control. Lyra frowned. And you want what? To use it yourself? No, the man said firmly. I want to give it back, piece by piece, to those willing to carry it. He pointed deeper into the derelict, into its shadowed halls. There are more fragments here, but the Autumn know it. They come, again and again, probing at the edges. This place is not safe for long. The shard in Lyra's palm pulsed harder, as though agreeing. Juno stepped closer, her voice low. If there are more shards, we need them to complete the map. The man's scarred face tightened into a grim smile. Then you'll need to go where even I won't. Into the heart. Deeper into the wreck. Lyra's gut twisted, but she knew what had to come next. Show us. The man nodded once, then turned toward a cracked bulkhead. As he led them deeper into the derelict, the shard's glow grew brighter, and Juno's eyes began to shimmer faintly again. Kael muttered under his breath. We're walking into a trap. We have to be walking into a trap. Probably, Lyra said grimly. But if the Autumn are after what's here, we can't leave it behind. Behind them, the darkness of the hangar stirred. For a moment, Lyra thought it was only her imagination. But then she saw it, a faint red glow, like eyes opening in the void. The Autumn had already found them. The red glow multiplied, dozens of eyes igniting in the dark hangar, spreading like embers across the fractured walls. Contact, Kael growled, bringing his rifle up. The first Autumn construct stepped into the flickering light. Angular, insectal, its limbs unfolded with metallic clicks. Behind it, more poured in, swarms of red-eyed hunters crawling over the wreck's broken geometry. The stranger's voice was grim but calm. They've been probing for weeks. You led them straight to the heart. Lyra's pistol snapped up. Then you'd better hope you know a way out. The man pulled a compact energy rifle from beneath his cloak. Follow me, and don't stop moving. Into the derelict. They plunged deeper into the wreck, boots hammering against a deck of warped metal. The corridors twisted unnaturally, some sloping at impossible angles where the derelict's spine had snapped. Entire walls were torn away, exposing skeletal beams that opened into the nebula's cold void. Autumn constructs followed, their footsteps a metallic chorus, red beams of energy slicing past. Kael spun mid-run, laying down bursts of fire. We're running through a corpse with no map. Wrong, Juno said, her breath short but her voice firm. She held the shard outward, its glow spilling against the walls. Lines of light flared in answer, tracing patterns across the alloy. It remembers the way. Lyra glanced at her, then at the stranger. Is she right? The man nodded once. The heart listens to those who carry its memory. Trust it. The pursuit. The shard's light drew them through a maze of shattered chambers. They passed what had once been a council hall, rows of thrones twisted into ruin. A gallery of crystalline archives, their data long burned away. Statues of figures too tall to be human, their faces scarred by war. Kael's rifle barked behind them, sparks spraying as another autumn collapsed. I hate to say it, but I'm starting to feel like we're mice in someone else's maze. Then let's find the exit before the cats catch up, Lyra said. But the autumn were learning. They began to flank, pouring through cracks in the walls ahead. The group skidded to a halt, pinned between two converging waves. Trap, Kael muttered. Called it. Juno lifted the shard. Its light blazed so bright the walls themselves seemed to hum. A hidden seam split open beside them, revealing a narrow chute plunging downward into shadow. The stranger didn't hesitate. Go? Lyra grabbed Juno's arm and leapt. Kael cursed and followed. They tumbled into darkness. The Chamber of Echoes. The chute spat them out into a cavernous chamber unlike anything they had seen yet. Dozens of crystal pylons rose from the floor like organ pipes, each one humming faintly with stored resonance. The shard pulsed in time with them, as though they were voices caught mid-song. Juno staggered forward, her eyes wide. This is it, the heart. The autumn poured into the chamber seconds later. The sentinel wasn't here to shield them. No Narian sang in defense. Only the ruined library of the derelict stood between them and annihilation. Lyra leveled her pistol. We make our stand. The shard in Juno's hands flared like a sun. The chamber answered. The Chamber of Echoes stirred like a throat clearing before a song. Light rippled up the crystal pylons in slow ascents, white-blue threads climbing their fluted bodies, hesitating, then cascading back down as if learning how to breathe again. The air, thin and stale in the wreck, tightened across Lyra's cheekbones. It felt like standing in the first hush of a storm. Autumn constructs clambered through the shattered archways, red optics flaring to life across the chamber's shadowed perimeter. The nearest dropped to a crouch and leveled an emitter, sanity stripped down to rule, acquire, erase, proceed. Lyra stepped in front of Juno on reflex. Kael, right flank. Already there. Kael barked, vaulting behind a fallen pylon and opening fire. His bolts spat staccato light. The first construct's shield flashed, then failed, then it collapsed in a crackle of sparking joints. More came. More always came. Juno moved to the center dais with the shard cupped in both hands, the glow silvering her face. The full ring of pylons answered her like old friends waking. Their hum, soft at first, thickened, the pitch rising until it brushed the edge of hearing and pressed on through bone. The stranger took a knee beside a jagged balustrade, lining shots with a steady economy learned on too many hard days. The chamber's not a weapon, he called, as if sensing Lyra's thought. It's a resonant engine. It amplifies what you bring to it. That sounds like a weapon to me, Kael shouted, ducking a lancing beam that carved furrows across the floor. It can be, the stranger returned, but it will ask a price. What price? Lyra demanded. Truth, he said simply, given and received. Two constructs flowed low and fast along the left, blades unfolding with insect grace. Lyra met the first with 3 quick shots, shoulder, hip, eye, then pivoted as the second sprang. Its blade glanced off her bracer, heat seared through fabric into forearm. She slammed her pistol barrel up into the machine's jaw joint and fired. It went slack. Juno? Kael cried. Tell me that song is going somewhere. Juno's eyes were unfocused, the shard's light painting their edges. "It's not singing to us," she said softly, voice gone distant. "It's asking us to sing back." Lyra risked a look at the ring. The pylon's harmonics were out of phase, so close to coherence that the dissonance hurt. She recognized the pattern from the silent sea only by feel. A chord almost formed, waiting for the missing notes. "How?" Lyra asked, the word a grit through her teeth. Juno lowered the shard to the dais. Its glow spilled along etched channels toward the ring. Triad alignment. 3 points. Anchor, conduit, tuner. She swallowed, breath shaking. "I can carry it. Conduit. But only if it has someplace to go." Kael popped up, fired, dropped again. "Anchor. Tuner. Pick your poison." Lyra's answer was immediate. "I anchor." She set her boot on the central stone and felt the chamber's hum find her weight, the way a ship's deck does in rough weather. She spread her stance, forced her lungs to slow. "Captain first. Kael, you tune." "Because of course I do," he muttered, then sprinted for a waist-high pylon and flipped open the access panel like he'd built it in another life. Inside, not wires, not in any modern sense, but strands of light braided around dark crystal veins. His hands hovered, reverent and terrified at once. "Okay, you beautiful impossible thing, talk to me." The autumn surged. They came in a wave. Compact forms at knee height like traps with legs, long-limbed striders that vaulted beams, drones that unfolded from ceiling shadows and buzzed down like hornets drunk on anger. The stranger scythed 2 from the air with neat pulses. Lyra shot 1 from her right and kicked another into a crystal spar. It died snarling with sparks. A strider swiped for Juno. Lyra stepped into the blow and took it on armor that wasn't meant for that, ribs ringing, then drove her shoulder into the machine to shove it wide. The stranger's beam licked past her ear and snapped its spine. "Thanks," Lyra panted. "Don't make me do it again," he said without heat, already tracking the next threat. The ring found a new pitch, higher, clearer. Juno set her palms to the dais stone. The shard lit through her like a second pulse, the glow rim-lighting the lines in her hands. Her voice, when she spoke, was barely sound at all. "Lyra, hold them steady. Kael." "Already adjusting," Kael said, moving the crystal veins by fractions, then smaller fractions, sweat beading on his lip as if he were balancing a blade's edge with 2 fingers. The chamber felt their decision and leaned in. Light climbed the pylons together this time and stayed. The hum knitted into a chord. The floor's patterns, so faint Lyra had thought them decorative, woke in lines of silver that raced out from the dais to the ring and back again. The air pressure shifted. Every breath tasted of penny metal and ozone. The autumn faltered. They were made to measure and adapt, to turn new variables into rules. This, whatever this was, did not offer neat edges. The nearest strider twitched, recalculating, as if trying to reconcile multiple versions of the same room. Lyra shot it in the eye node while it hesitated and watched it fall as if gravity changed its mind twice on the way down. "Stability is 7 out of 10, Kael said through his teeth. "I can push 8 if, Juno, you have to." "Don't tell me to breathe," Juno whispered. But she did. "Slow in. Slower out." The shard's glow steadied down from blinding to bright. "Anchor is steady. Conduit is open. Tune to this." She sang. It wasn't music in the throat. It was rhythm in the bones, a timing and intent. A thread between inner ear and engine room, between memory and matter. Lyra felt it as a hand on her back, encouraging her shoulders down, spine tall, weight even. Kael felt it as a pattern in a winding bearing that stops when you tap, just so. He moved 2 veins half a degree. The cord locked. The ring answered with a single, unified breath. Light rose, met at the chamber's crown, and came down. It didn't strike like a hammer. It arrived like relief. For a heartbeat, the room was full of them. Tall figures walking between pylons and echoes of light. Gestures too immense and gentle to belong to hands that killed. Architects. No faces, just the idea of faces, like sunlight filtered through deep water. Lyra's throat closed. She didn't believe the note that wanted to be a sob, and still it burned behind her eyes. The wave moved outward across the chamber. Autumn bodies, metal predicated on certainty, met uncertainty embodied. Their optics fractured into kaleidoscopes. Shields forgot whether they were up or down and chose both until they chose neither. One by one they stuttered, spasmed, dropped, quietly, like dreams set aside in mourning. Silence fell in a rush, broken only by the fading chime of the pylons. Lyra's shoulders loosened without her permission. Status? Kael let out a laugh that went through 3 wrong shapes before finding relief. Ringing ears, singed eyebrows, and an engineering religion I will not be naming in public. Juno swayed. Lyra caught her. The glow at the corners of Juno's eyes dimmed, then brightened again, soft and stubborn. It worked, Juno said, incredulous and proud and exhausted all at once. We answered it. The stranger rose from his crouch and looked around the chamber with something like grief carefully folded under gratitude. I didn't think anyone would. I thought this place would go silent for good. Lyra eased Juno back onto the dais edge. We're not done. She looked to the ring, to the lines still faintly lit. If this is an engine, what else does it power? The archive, the stranger said. He nodded toward the far wall. A seam there, until now just another scar, glimmered. You bought yourself a door. Lyra crossed the chamber, stepping over the husks of steel machines. The seam recognized the shard in her hand and opened with a tired sigh. Beyond lay a narrow gallery, low and intimate after the cathedral of the ring. Shelves of black crystal lined both sides, each shelf holding small polyhedral stones, shards, but not like Juno's. These hummed at the edge of perception, each with its own flavor of quiet, like 100 sleeping thoughts. Kael peered in and forgot to frame it as a joke. A library. Pieces of one, the stranger said. The derelict couldn't run when she fell. She folded, catalog into fragments, memory into carryable weight. He nodded at the central pedestal, a plain thing compared to the shelves, and the index. On the pedestal sat a shard larger than the rest, its facets dull, as if ashamed. Lyra set their shard beside it. The dull one woke at the touch, not to light, but to pattern. Lines crawled across it like frost forming, routes, lattices, diagrams that were not maps and yet were. The chamber dimmed. The pylon's glow pulsed once, twice, fatigue in a structure. Talk fast, Kael said. She's tired. The index flared, and the pattern settled. 3 coordinates shone brighter than the rest, triangulating something that left a cold weight in Lyra's gut. Juno read them as if she'd always known how. The glass reef, the ash orchard, the kestrel halo. She touched the last, and the shard in Lyra's palm heated with a soft urgency. They're not just vaults. They're choir posts, places meant to be sung together. And when they are? Lyra asked. Then the map isn't a map anymore, Juno said. It's a door. Behind them, something changed in the chamber's sound. Lyra felt the shift before she heard it. The resonance slipping a fraction, pickups whining at the edge of stall. The derelict had woken and fought and opened her heart, and now the bill for that grace arrived. We need to go, the stranger said quietly. Right now? Lyra scooped the index shard. It was heavy with meaning, not mass. She slid both shards into a chest pouch, sealed it, and turned, and found the stranger watching her with a weight that wasn't threat. What did it ask of you? He said. Truth, she answered. The word cost less than she'd feared and more than she'd admit. And what did you give it? That we won't run from this, Lyra said. It surprised her by being the exact shape of what she felt. He nodded once, satisfied. Then go. I'll hold the door. Come with us, Lyra said. It wasn't politeness. No, he said. He tapped his implant with 2 fingers. The gesture was ground into habit. I've been here too long. She listens to me in small ways. I can keep the paths crooked for a little while, enough to blur you from anything that comes after. Kael grimaced. Heroic and stupid. My least favorite combo. The stranger's mouth made a dry smile. It's a good death when it pays the debt. Juno reached for him impulsively, then drew back. Thank you, she said, simple and sincere. He nodded again, turned, and ghosted back into the chamber, already a part of its ruin. They ran. Corridors that had welcomed them now shuddered with the effort of staying coherent. Lights guttered. Decks tilted another degree. In one long hall a seam opened, and the nebula's pale dust wind hissed in, carrying the smell of cold metal. Kael tossed Lyra a mag tether. She clipped it to Juno's harness in the same motion they'd practiced since the first job they'd done together. Autumn skittered in the periphery, stragglers shaking off the ring's benediction. Lyra shot only what threatened. Kael shouldered the rest aside with a grunt and a curse. Twice the shard tugged Juno's attention left when vision said right. Both times the wrong turn bought them a corridor still intact. They burst into the hangar. Raptor-One crouched on her scarred legs in the halo of their floodlights, home written in angles and heat stain. The deck underfoot thrummed with a new, worrying rhythm, the derelict's anchors slipping in the nebula's grip. Kael didn't wait for orders. Pre-flight online. Hot start. If she coughs, kick her. Juno, Lyra said, gentle only because there was no time for anything else, on nav. Juno dropped into her chair, hands trembling as they fell into place. The shard's glow spilled into the star plot like ink and water. A thread appeared. Out, up, away, tight and mean but there. The hangar doors juddered. Red eyes bled in along the upper catwalks. Lyra ran the ramp and slapped the close. It hissed up like a curtain dropped on a bad act. Strap, she said, already at the stick. They launched. The ship lifted dirty, like a boxer off the mat, then found her center. Lyra threaded the ruined bay mouth and punched through into the nebula's electric breath. Arcs crawled the canopy. Kael's board lit with a dozen mild complaints and one severe. Anchor collapsed behind us, he reported. When it lets go, it's going to. It let go. The derelict lurched in the scope, a city-sized corpse tugged by undertow, and the nearest tether snapped with a flare that lit the mist like sheet lightning. For a heartbeat, Lyra saw the whole wreck roll, silhouetted, all that ruin and all that memory turning slow and implacable like an ancient leviathan. A wake of debris billowed out. A wedge of autumn shapes arrowed for that opening. The stranger's promised crookedness arrived in the form of doors that shut where there had been holes and holes that yawned where there had been doors. The wedge broke, confused, then reformed and chose Raptor-One as the simpler math. Here they come, Kael said, too calm to be anything but terrified and professional. Hold on, Lyra said. She threw the ship into the shard's line. The nebula thickened, static crawled, and then wrapped them like a cloak. The first volley from the autumn passed where they had been, carving luminous ropes through dust. Lyra rolled, let the dust bloom hide her, and bled heat to nothing. They went cold, small, intentional. It almost worked. A scout, sleeker, meaner, cut across the far side of their veil, reading edges. It snapped a knife of light at their wake. The shot grazed the tail. The ship leaped like a struck animal. Alarms woke and begged, and Lyra ignored every one that wasn't about reality ending. "Come on," she told the ship. "Not today." Juno's hand found the console and pressed, once, like a child to a window. The shard answered with a single high harmonic. Something in the drift around them bent. The scout overshot, by a hair, by a blessing measured in millimeters in faith, and lost them in a ribbon of pale static that moved like water. They were clear, not safe, just clear. Silence found the cabin in layers. Kael let out a long breath he'd been saving since the chamber. Juno leaned back and closed her eyes. Lyra flexed her fingers on the stick and only then realized they hurt. The shard cooled in her chest pouch. It pulsed once, gratitude, or confirmation, or simple continuation. When Lyra glanced at the plot, the 3 coordinates still glowed: glass reef, ash orchard, kestrel halo. The lines between them made a triangle whose center ached to be named. Kael broke the hush. "Never going back there," he said. Lyra looked at the wreck dwindling behind them, at the lightning walking its bones, at the way the nebula swallowed it, as if tucking it back into a secret. "We might have to," she said quietly. "One day." Juno's voice was a thread. "If we do, it will still be listening." Lyra set their course along the first leg the shard favored, subtle, slant, toward a place the charts called nothing and the index called beginning. She let Raptor-One run. Behind them, deep in the derelict, a man with a ruined eye leaned his shoulder into a door the size of a house and held it shut until the numbers stopped making sense. When the autumn came, he smiled once, small and satisfied, and told the ship she had been beautiful. The chamber gave him a last soft note in return. Ahead, the next road waited. Lyra, Kael, and Juno flew into it, carriers not just of a shard, but of a promise they had chosen to believe.
Thank you for listening. If you would like to be notified about upcoming releases to the Raptor-One series, please subscribe. This has been a Bad Karma Drone production.